You guys, the 2020 experience is here, and I could not be more excited to share this with you. It is a culmination of the many years I have spent participating in high-level masterminds and the many years of leading masterminds. Quite frankly, it's what I desperately want myself, and I think is needed and is completely missing. I don't know anyone else doing this. And so I put it together just for you. It is for 32 ambitious women who are ready to make 2020 their year. It involves a larger mastermind of 32. It involves a smaller mastermind of 8. It involves accelerators to really dig deep and get momentum when you need it most. It involves one-on-one expert coaching and services. It involves 3 in-person meetings, 2 of which are at Miraval, which is a luxury retreat, which really in and of itself transforms every part of you because it allows you to tap into the wellness and the mindset and the peace that is needed in order to truly go after your dreams. This entire year is intended to help you go bigger than you've ever gone before, to really get outside of your comfort zone and to leave behind those old patterns, those old excuses that keep showing up over and over again, and they're holding you back and keeping you from having the life that you really want. So this program is not for the faint of heart. It is only for those who are 100% committed and ready to go all in, ready to leave their excuses at the door and to really show up in a way that they've never shown up before for themselves, for their families, for their careers, for a group of women that perhaps they've not experienced that before. A tribe of women who are really at that high level, supporting you, pushing you, and challenging you, and calling you on your stuff so that you can be the best version of yourself. It is going to be a year of intense hustle and intense flow, and it is going to change lives. And the ripple effect is going to go far beyond just this group of 32 women. But it is here. It is ready for you. If you're looking for a breakout year in 2020, you can apply at 2020mastermindexperience.com. Welcome to Hustle and Flow with Heather Hubbard, episode 140. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard, and I was a litigator, partner, and practice group leader at an Am Law 200 firm. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you embrace your ambition without selling your soul? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back. I am your host, Heather Hubbard, and today we are talking about ROI. But first, I just want to share the circumstances of recording this podcast episode for you. I think many of you assume that I have it together all of the time, which is odd to me because I do feel like I share with you a lot of my issues on the podcast, and yet because I have the planner, because I am strategic, because I go after big things and reach big goals, I think you guys have this perception that I have everything together and like nothing ever comes up unplanned. And so I just want to share with you that I'm recording this episode the week before it's coming out. So it is Tuesday, November 12th, and you're going to be getting this episode on the 19th. I have a flight to Miami this afternoon. I fly out at 1:30. We are having our live event. So many of you are actually flying to Miami to meet me to spend Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday together planning for 2020. So can't wait for that. But this isn't ideal, right? Like this is not ideal for me on the morning before I'm ready to head out. I still have a bunch of things that have to get done. It has been crazy. And I am recording the podcast right now. A lot of times I try to batch them, do them in advance. Wasn't able to get that done. And then even yesterday, I ended up canceling a flight to Philly. I was already supposed to go there. I was feeling overwhelmed. Again, this is where you have to make hard decisions, hard choices to take care of yourself. So I canceled something to be able to stay home. And then my mother called and said, hey, I think I'm going to bring your grandfather by, and I don't ever get to see him. And so, again, it's like you're left with, what are your options? What are your opportunities? And I wanted to be able to see him and be present with him. And I want to, still be fully prepared and show up and serve those in Miami. And I have all this stuff to do, including the podcast. And so how do you make it work? Right? This is life. You can have the best made plans, and sometimes it just doesn't go to schedule. The point is you just have to be intentional when you get in that moment. So I was still making decisions as opposed to feeling powerless and overwhelmed. Instead, I said, okay, well, what has to get done? What can we let go of? So some emails this week are not going out. I considered actually skipping this podcast, but decided it would be easy enough to jump on and do. The planners. I will eventually record a podcast episode for you on that. This year was a huge learning year on the planners. Lots of things going on behind the scenes. It's a little bit too raw for me to even share everything at this point, but we finally, after many, many things, we finally have the planners and the bookmarks and the pads at the warehouse. Found out yesterday. So they're shipping out now. You can now buy them. So lots going on. And there is always the opportunity, like I said, to feel overwhelmed and stressed out. And the way that I've been trying to shift my perspective the last 2 days around this is I get to make the decisions and choices that are good for me. And I am grateful for the opportunities, and I choose to be present in whatever opportunity I am in. So for any of you where you're getting some curveballs thrown at you and you're feeling completely overwhelmed, know that you have the opportunity to say no to things, even if you've already said yes. You have opportunities to say yes to things, and then the attitude that you bring to the table is always available to you. So let's talk about ROI, and then I'm going to go pack and get on this plane. So this episode is in some ways a follow-up to episode 138, where we talked about analysis paralysis, which came from the concept of I'm having a lot of conversations around the 2020 mastermind experience, doing interviews, and I've been making investments myself. I think in episode 138, I talked about hiring a publicist, but I've made a lot of investments recently. I think I've shared, I'm always in a mastermind, some type of programming that I think is just going to elevate me. And so I am currently interviewing and looking at masterminds to invest in for 2020. I have been investing in speaking, training at a higher level. And there was a publicist, just made 2 employee hires, full-time hires. We're redoing the website. We talked a little bit about that in the last episode 139. So there's a lot going on. Not to mention, so for the mastermind experience, the 2020 mastermind experience, we are investing in Miraval in Tucson, Miraval in Austin, as well as Life and Law Live, which I can share now because it's not been shared yet publicly, but when this comes out, it will have been shared. Our live event next year will not be called Life and Law Live because we are expanding beyond lawyers. I'm not quite sure what the name will be. We're just calling it the live event. That's going to be in San Diego, the Hilton San Diego. So doing a ton of contracts, right? So making a bunch of investments, and it can be really scary to do that. And so what comes up when I make those investments is, I'm looking at, does it make sense from a financial perspective, but I'm also looking at ROI. What's the return on the investment? And you may be thinking, well, isn't that the same thing as financial? Sometimes, not always. And some of the investments I've been making recently, it was through some miscommunications and mishaps that I realized just how important this is. And then again, oftentimes when I am speaking with someone about the 2020 experience, if I extend an offer and they're deciding whether to join, a lot of times for them, they're also analyzing what they think their potential ROI, what they would want it to be. And I'm actually encouraging them, even if they're not, to start doing so. So it's been on my mind a lot lately, and it's even influencing the way we're going to run the 2020 Mastermind experience. So I wanted to share this with you. I had actually hoped that I could batch this with analysis paralysis at the same time, which didn't happen, but recording it this morning, so you're still going to get it. So the first thing that I really think you need to focus on when you're making an investment, I guess you could do this whether it's a large investment or a small investment. For me, it's really only the large investments where I really want to think through it and give it space, time, and energy. As an entrepreneur, honestly, as anything, I think it's, even if it's in your career, I think it's actually more helpful, but especially if you own your own company, to be really decisive and just take action, because it is action takers who tend to get results. While other people are planning and thinking about what they're going to do, action takers are just doing, right? So they can get ahead. So I think it's really important that if it's a small investment, you've just got to learn to start trusting your gut and just being decisive. But when it is a larger decision, it is certainly worth considering what the potential ROI would be. And I do see this a lot with my clients when they're investing in other things as well, right? Whether it's investing in an employee or investing in a coach or a consultant or investing in a website or SEO or advertising or anything else. The question becomes, is it going to be worth it? Will it be worth it? I always like to consider it an investment, not a cost, because when you use that word investment, it actually recognizes that there is both some risk involved as well as some potential upside, a reward, right? So it's not just an exchange. And if you are a service provider and someone is buying something from you, I would suggest that they too are making an investment. There is both a risk and a potential upside and reward. And when we consider things simply in terms of, well, this is my hourly rate, and so regardless of what happens for you, this is what I'm going to charge. This is simply an exchange for time and money. I would challenge you on that. From your client's perspective, from the consumer perspective, especially if the tables were turned and you were making an investment in a coach or a consultant or someone else, you don't really care about the time for money. You care about your results. You care about the value that you're going to receive, right? You don't really care how much time they spend on it, and you don't really care what their hourly rate is. You need to know that it's going to be worth it for you. We talked a lot about this in episode 76 and episode 79 related to fixed fees, because it really is about value. And so I think the sooner you can realize as a service professional that people are not buying your time, they are not buying your hourly rate, they are buying an outcome or results or value, it allows you to look at your services and the way you charge for them differently. And so whether you are considering a client's perspective or your own when it comes to investing, when you're going to be paying a large amount of money, and that's different for everyone, right? You have to decide what that means for you. It's important to ask the question, what return on investment do I need or want for this to have felt worth it? Now, like I said, there is risk involved. And so anytime you are walking into a large investment and you are wanting a guarantee that there is no risk, right? Like there is no way you'll ever lose anything. You are guaranteed success. Well, the answer is always going to be no. It's always going to be no, because there is always risk involved. That's why there is an investment component to it. It is why service professionals, and if you are one, including you don't guarantee results, because that's not possible. So if you're wanting guaranteed results, then you might as well just play it safe and never expect to have big rewards, because you do have to take risks in order to get big results, in order to have those potential upswings, those upsides, and those rewards. You have to be willing to take that risk. And so the question isn't what will make the cost worth it. It's really more what will make the risk worth it. If I make this investment and I know there's risk involved, what would be the upside such that if this happens, it totally would have been worth it? Totally, and then some, right? So in many ways, it's often not just recouping the cost itself. For some people, it is. For others, it's, well, I want even bigger upside. Again, it has to break even for me to do this, then you're just not willing to invest, period, right? But go ahead and consider, what do I really want to see happen for this result? Now, again, you may not look at it from a risk perspective. Your clients may not look at it from a risk perspective. So, I guess at a bare minimum, it's if I'm paying this particular cost, right? Then what kind of result or outcome am I looking for that would be worth it? And I mentioned earlier, it can be financial, but it doesn't have to be. I was talking to a sales coach who said she gets really annoyed and frustrated when people say they didn't get their ROI from coaching or a group program or something like that, because she says, a lot of times the value and the benefit you get is not financial. And to me, that's just semantics, because there's still ROI. There's still a return. It's just not a financial return. And you're still getting something out of it, right? If you're not getting the financial return or anything else, you still didn't get any return on the investment. So I think it's important first and foremost to realize that ROI can represent many, many, many different things, not just a financial return. So let me give you an example. I am investing a lot of money in speaker training, almost $30,000 just in the fees to the leaders, the company. That doesn't include any of my travel or accommodations, which there's a lot. So for me, some people may be doing that, right? Because they want to be professional speakers and travel all the time. They might already be professional speakers and they're just trying to get higher fees, whatever, right? It could be financial. That absolutely could be something someone is looking for that would make up for that payment. For me, I ended up sticking with it and investing for a longer period of time and doing the higher level work because I have a book on my heart, and it's been on my heart for a really long time. The title has been on a Post-it note above my desk in my office for a really long time. And I've always said, well, when I have the time to do it, I will, which is funny because, as you know, I always say, well, that doesn't exist. Time is never going to magically appear. It really just is, how motivated are you to do it? Well, in the past, I wanted it. I wanted to bring it to this world, but I also was very early on in this business and needed to create momentum and make money and pay my bills. So I knew that if you're going to write a book, the type of book I'm wanting to do, and start doing keynotes around that, it's going to be a really long lead time. And it takes a ton of time. So to be able to turn that around, it didn't make sense for me. But I'm at the point now where I really, really, really want it to come to light. So for me, I am investing in that because it is allowing me to work on the script. So the way I looked at it is I said, okay, I'm going to work on a keynote, but that keynote is going to allow me to then make it even smaller for a TED Talk and then expand it into the book. I'm investing that money not for an immediate financial return. Do I hope there will be a financial return at some point? Yeah, that would be awesome. But I don't actually have to have the financial return because what I want is to get this out into the world. That book, that message is so important to me. I don't want to die having it still within. I want it to have come out. And that is worth it to me. The joy I will feel, the relief I will feel, knowing that I got the message out, even if no one reads it, right? That's not even what it's about. It's about it coming out of me for my own sake. That feeling is the return I am looking for. Now, the risk is it's a huge project. And what if I quit? And what if I don't do it? And the risk is, what if I do it and no one likes it? No one cares. I never get hired once to do this keynote, or I'm begging people to let me do it for free. And they're like, that's not any good. No one wants to read the book. Right? That's the risk, is that I'm spending this money and I'm not going to get any return. But for me, as long as I put in the work, there will be a return because it's the feeling I will get knowing that it's finally out there. And it's the process itself. So oftentimes I am the teacher. I am the leader. I, don't get opportunities to be really creative and playful and critiqued on a really high level. And I have to say it's been difficult initially because, I'm so used to succeeding that when I get critical feedback, it's like, oh my gosh, this is like going back to early days, but it's super helpful and I love it. It's helping me, get outside my comfort zone. So even that is worth the return. It's getting me every month. I'm flying up there. So I'm getting out of my space. I get to play. I get to be a student. That return is enough. In fact, I've already signed up for 4 more months because that's worth it to me. So that's where I want you to get clear on anytime you're making these investments. What is it that I want most? What is it that I want most and what would make it worth it? In fact, I have realized that so often when I invest in someone, if I am then disappointed with the service or the results, it typically relates to the fact that either I wasn't clear on what I was hoping to achieve or I failed to communicate it to the person I hired. I'm going to say that again. Often when I am disappointed with a service provider, a coach, a consultant, the results that I, received, it was either because I was not clear as to what I was wanting, or 2, I did not communicate it to the service provider. Because I'm a service provider, because you're a service provider, my guess is that's really helpful for you to know as well. Because you may assume that you know what your client needs and wants and why they're hiring you. And you might be dead wrong. You guys, great news. The 2020 planners, project pad, and bookmarks are finally here. More than a typical planner, it is a complete planning system that will revolutionize the way you approach your days, weeks, months, and years. It will help you achieve your biggest goals and work on that to-do list so that you can take back your day and focus on what matters most. Get yours now at lifeandlawplanner.com. So you may approach a project or the way you're serving someone in a very specific way where you think it was wonderful because you did exactly what you thought you would do. And they may be really disappointed because that wasn't what they had envisioned at all. So getting clear on that on the front end is super important. And like I said, I've been dealing with this a lot lately, both in terms of people investing in my programs and me investing in other programs. And it has just become so crystal clear to me why it's so important to get clear on this on the front end. In fact, it's why in the 2020 experience, I've never done this before. And so I'm excited to see what happens with it. At the beginning, everyone, when we're at Miraval in Tucson, everyone is going to be pointing towards their big goal, like what they're trying to achieve for the year. We're breaking it down into thirds. So every 4 months, there will also be a smaller goal milestone that people are working towards. But in addition to that, at Miraval in Tucson, I'm going to have every single person define the ROI that they need and want. For some people, it will be financial, and for others, it won't. But I want them to think about it. I want them to be clear on the ROI they want, because sometimes that's going to look very different than what the stated goal is. And if you as a client, if you're not clear on what that is, the service provider certainly can't ever deliver to your standards. And you're not going to know how to communicate to the service provider what they need to do different or what you're expecting. And so I'm going to have them identify that at the beginning so that I can see it. Because if what they're needing and wanting is crazy, right? So let's say you're making $150,000 a year and you're like, the only way that this program will have been worth it at the end of the year is if I have made $1 million in revenue. Well, then on day one, we can have a conversation around, okay, well, that's probably unrealistic. It might be possible, but like, what's the plan? Right? And if we can have that conversation on the front end, that's going to be far more productive than someone going along, right, each month, each quarter, and being really frustrated with the results, thinking, well, I thought I was going to make $1 million. It's like, well, had I known that, I could have told you that's probably not going to happen this year. And the other reason why is, let's say it is realistic, right? It's within the range of reason. As they have their ROI, their stated ROI that they're looking for, and they've got their goals, if I see that the two are not aligned and that focusing on the goals is not going to actually help get the ROI, I can flag that. And I can say, it's your decision, right? You can still move towards this. We can still work on your teams and your systems. But if you're telling me the ROI that you want over here is $1 million book of business, well, we could tangentially try to line those up, but you're focusing on two very different things, right? So it's going to be really hard to deliver on this ROI when you're focused on this goal and they're not the same thing. And I think it's really easy to overlook that. And so you get to the end of a year, or you get to the end of a program, or you get your website redone, or something else gets redone, and you're like, well, that's not what I was wanting. Maybe with a website, the designer, the developer is focused solely on conversions. They're just trying to get people to your website and then to your office. Whereas for you, maybe your goal was just that you wanted it to look beautiful and be a credibility marker. Those are two very different things, very, very different things. So if you're not communicating that and everyone's not on the same page at the beginning, then you're going to have some hiccups along the way. There'll be some frustrations. And then, at the end, everyone's like, well, I don't understand why you don't see I'm unhappy. And the other person's like, well, I don't understand why you're unhappy, right? Because you both were focused on two totally different things. And again, I think a lot of us fail to even recognize for ourselves what we truly want that ROI to be. The goal is we're going to have a website done by this date. That's why the goal and the ROI can look different. The ROI is really kind of an intention. What is my intention for making this investment? What is the potential upside that I am hoping for and looking for? If you can articulate that and you can share it with the service provider, that is going to help you more likely get that. And two, to be able to have frank conversations along the way. It helps you too, to also catch when things are, if it's not right, if you're 1 month in or 2 months in or 3 months in and you're seeing that you're not getting the return, it allows you to be able to go to the service provider and say, this was what I was wanting and I don't feel like I'm getting it. So what are some things we can do to get back on track? It also gives you information as to what you need to do. Because as a service provider yourself, I think you would recognize the concept that you can't control your clients. They still have to take action. Well, the same is true when you are in the client role. You can't just hire someone and expect them to do all the stuff if you're not willing to participate and show up and do the thing as well. So when you're constantly looking at both the goal and the ROI and asking, am I showing up in a way that's going to get me closer to that? And is my service provider showing up in a way that's going to get me closer to that? If you're not doing that, the likelihood of you being happy at the end of the day, it's not there, right? It's not there. When you do this, it also lets you catch those moments where maybe you are at 150 and you're trying to make $1 million in a year. It allows you to catch what's unreasonable because, again, you may not even realize what you're doing. Sometimes we get in a pinch and we make decisions out of desperation. And so maybe we hire someone thinking, well, if I throw money at this, it will solve all my problems. It will be a magic pill. And so when you then articulate what that ROI is and you see that you're looking for a magic pill, that should be a major red flag for you that is not a good investment because you're probably not going to get the ROI you're looking for. And then you're going to be frustrated at the provider and yourself for having made an investment that did not turn out the way you wanted, when the truth is you were making the decision from this desperate emotional place as opposed to, a good, logical, rational investment. So like I said, this is something I'm testing for the 2020 Mastermind experience, is having everyone identify the ROI they're looking for so that I can, determine, do I think that's realistic? And then help me stay focused on making sure they get their ROI as well. Because it doesn't matter what my goals and hopes and dreams are for them if they have something very different in mind. I need to be servicing them and what they want. And so I encourage you as a service provider to start considering the same thing. Do you want to play with this? Do you want to test this to see what it looks like to start asking your clients about their intentions and what would make it worth it for them? Where is the value for them? And then focusing on what they need and want as opposed to what you think they need and want. All right, so that's it for today. That is my episode for you on calculating ROI. As a heads up, as of the day that I'm recording this, I think I had shared before, our rooming list was due to Miraval, I think around like November 4th, 5th, 6th, something like that. We have finalized that. We added a few more rooms. We have 9 guaranteed spots left. If you are interested in potentially participating in the 2020 experience, your time is running out because we kick off in Tucson that first week of January, and I am headed to Morocco. So you need to get your application in. We need to get interviews done. We are wrapping that up now. You may be thinking, well, 2020 is, I've got a little bit. No, you don't. We're here. If you're really looking to have a breakout year, if you're wanting to go bigger, if you would love to have a year worth of support and someone who actually cares about your ROI, I encourage you to check it out. Look at it, 2020mastermindexperience.com. All right, that's it for today. I will be back next week. For show notes, downloads, and other free resources, and to keep the conversation going, head on over to hustleandflowpodcast.com. See you there.